Hello, packages, parsers, and programs. It's tax season, so why not provide an AppSec tax refund? Skip that list of phishing terms, remove that password strength calculator, hide that hardening guide, and instead, make passkeys palatable. Deliver smart defaults, defeat classes of vulns with a good design. And so, this week we talk with Farshad Abasi and Cameron Walters about the OWASP Secure Pipeline Verification Standard, its goals, controls, and where it might still have a few gaping holes. Spend wisely and stay tuned for Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show to learn the latest tools and techniques to understand DevOps, applications, and the cloud. Your trusted source for the latest AppSec news. It's time for Application Security Weekly. Zero trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny and execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold. Trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's zero trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/threatlocker. Generative AI is powerful, but it comes with real risks, from prompt injection to data leakage misuse and agentic AI. The OWASP Gen AI Security Project unites a global community of expert practitioners who tackle these challenges every day. Together, they've built practical playbooks, adoption guides, and the OWASP Top 10 for LLMs, resources any team can apply right now to strengthen AI security. And it doesn't stop there. This is open source, built by practitioners, for practitioners, working together to secure generative AI. Visit securityweekly.com/OWASP to use the playbooks and join the effort to protect tomorrow's intelligence today. This is episode 378, recorded April 13th. It's a good spooky Monday the 13th, 2026. I'm your host, Mike Shima. I'm here with John Kinsella. Hello, John.
Man, this time flies. How did we almost get halfway through April already?
Halfway through April and halfway to Halloween. So I've been enjoying Shudder always celebrates that. So go watch a horror movie or listen to a InfoSec podcast. They're both pretty scary these days. Speaking of scary, we've got two fun guests, actually. Cameron Walters, he's a director of application security and security engineering. He started as a software engineer, which is a good background, and spent his career building and scaling product security programs across globally distributed orgs. He also co-hosts the Coffee, Chaos, and ProdSec podcast. Hello, Cameron.
Hey, glad to be here.
Glad to have you bring a little bit of chaos to us. Always appreciate that. And we have returning guest, Farshad Abasi. He's founder and CEO of Forward Security and Eureka DevSecOps, bringing over 29 years of industry experience to cybersecurity innovation. He's had roles at Intel, Motorola, been a principal security architect at HSBC Global, and head of IT security for their Canadian division. Hello again, Farshad. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing well, because we're about to talk about the OWASP Secure Pipeline Verification Standard, the SPVS. So the first thing I have to question to throw over to you, and we'll let the two of you figure out how to answer this, is why an SPVS and not just another top 10 list? You could have just saved yourselves a lot of time.
You want to take this, Cameron, or you want me to take this?
You go first. Shots fired.
I guess, the Mike is a good question. Cameron and I met in 2023, October at LastCon, and we were both at a talk. There was a gentleman talking about threats to pipelines. And then after the talk, Cameron and I agreed that there needs to be a standard that provides controls that are specific to pipeline security, because we found that there was a lack of such a standard. I'm a huge fan of OWASP's Application Security Verification Standard, also known as ASVS. So we thought something like ASVS for pipelines would be a great idea. So we came up with Secure Pipeline Verification Standard, or SPVS. So that's sort of the short and sweet history of how we met and how the project started. I think, Cameron, if I'm not mistaken, right, we got approval from OWASP in January 2024, and then we worked subsequently for a year and a half on it. We had our first release about October of 2025. So it took us about a year and a bit to get our first release out there, but we got the first release out, and we just had our release 1.5 out last Tuesday. So quite excited about that. It's a feedback release. It's about 132 or so AI specific controls that we added because it's a hot topic and we didn't have such controls, and encourage all the audience to go and check it out, do your self-assessment, and give us feedback.
Yeah, that's a huge thing because you had that 1.0 release and now you're on that 1.5, but now with AI. And I didn't realize that, those 130 plus controls are actually AI specific. Tell us a little bit more. The reason I want to ask this, how much of this needed to be AI versus I could have gone in there and just said, here is SPVS now with, the automated shell script or the cron job that touches your CI/CD pipeline. What's unique about those 100 plus items on AI?
I think it's a good question. And the reason I think that we needed something separate was because there's a lot of very specific controls, security concerns, blast radiuses that come with AI. Original controls, if you think about it, it's a deterministic process. That process is expected. You know what it's going to do. With AI, there's kind of a blast radius. We're seeing some noisy things or with our agents where they maybe like break something or they go out of the bounds of the scope of what you're supposed to do. And so it made most sense to kind of extrapolate and build some very specific controls. Where this will head in the future, I think that is a whole, as everything with AI, it's just evolution. But there's a lot of different kind of controls around like AI bombs. That's a very specific control. We could drop that in there. There's AI assisted coding and vibe coding. And I love it that it's called the new corporate term for vibe coding is agentic engineering. I was like, chef's kiss. LinkedIn came in perfect for that one. But there's a lot of very specific things that come with these controls and the multi-agents and the speed at which code is now being delivered, as well as MCP servers, all kinds of different things like that. And when you start to look at it from that perspective, it grew. And I think during our brainstorming stages, and that's kind of why the SPVS took so long to deliver our first one, is because we had Farshad, what it was like 200-300 controls when we first brainstormed. Yeah, it was like my mental process is usually just throw as many ideas at a wall and just keep going and going and going until I get exhausted. And then I'm like, all right, now let's clean this up because we have a lot of overlap. Maybe two controls are too broad. Maybe they're too specific. Maybe they're too specific on one technology. And so for me, it's like AI is moving so fast. We got to release this ASAP. We got to get these controls out to everyone. And again, this is our community feedback, meaning I bet it'll collapse. I think as people review it and as we continue to review it, controls will be ruled out or they won't make as much sense, or maybe we combine them into other categories, or they already exist in the previous one in an indirect way. And so that's kind of what we're looking for, is that we're just two guys building this out. We're looking for more people to help us out. And it doesn't make sense for us to come and build something without that doesn't have an industry foundation of knowledge. Whereas, the original SPVS, everyone knows the OWASP top 10 and the CI/CD top 10 and all these attack vectors. We've been doing CI/CD for years. So
that's where I want to jump in for a second and definitely come back to the AI angle. That's inescapable, of course. But what you were saying there too, I would also love to see 100 controls condensed into, let's just use the number 10 because it's simpler. It doesn't have to be a top 10. But the idea of how much, as you were going through these and collapsing them and rethinking them, how much of these would you have wished were, why doesn't the GitHub or GitLab, why don't the platform or the service providers do this for you, for the enterprises, for the orgs, or make this very simple by defaults rather than everybody on their own has to go in and flip these switches and make these tweaks and do these aspects? Is there a ecosystem problem here with all these platform service providers?
I don't know, Farshad, I can go
That's
first.
an interesting one. Like, the whole secure by default, could the products have them built in, right? Like, hey, could Jenkins have a bunch of those things built in? I guess the number one thing, Mike, is that by our definition, pipeline is not just limited to CI/CD pipeline. And Cameron, maybe you can speak to this. We've extended the definition way outside
strong feelings
just the
on this.
CI/CD pipeline, right? And I guess maybe, yes, there are certain controls where maybe the vendors or the products could have enabled by default. But I think, Cameron, maybe you would think differently. But I think a lot of those are things that it's sort of like, how in cloud there's a shared responsibility. Cloud provider gives you the building blocks. You still have to do something to secure them. There's no way that cloud provider can just hand you the final product. It's like, hey, here's your Lego blocks, you go build it. And I think it's a lot of that in the pipeline space as well. Like,
and maybe a different way, and I'll maybe throw this over to Cameron too, let you get in there, is a different way to ask that question is, how many of these are, here's a control that flip this setting, versus here is a process, here's a behavior that people have to follow. Is that an important mix in a list like this that you discovered?
I definitely think it is important, but I wouldn't say it's the primary driver, right? The primary driver of these things is to provide essentially a checklist that is specific enough that it's actionable, but not too specific that is bound by a technology. We have lots of different CI/CD platforms. You got GitHub, Jenkins, Circle CI, right? I could just name a billion of them off. And if I tailor it to like GitHub, I'm going to have a set of controls that are very narrow and that are very specific and not effective to the broad use. So when we're building these controls, there was always that constant debate of how do we build this to make the most sense that it is broad enough, but also specific enough. And I always say specific because I deal in a very compliance certification. I have to comply to like 30 something different security certifications globally. And so I argue with auditors all day long, and all the time I'm like, I hate this control. I literally hate this control. It's like so broad that it gives the auditor just so much power. And I'm like, why was it written this way? Literally, why were you written this way? And so I review my controls consistently, being like, okay, is it specific enough that I wouldn't get angry? But there are definitely 100% controls that are like, flip this switch, right? Do some basic like, control access or something along those lines, right? There are those. But the point is to have an audit list and to go through that list and be like, okay, yes, we're doing this. Yes, we did flip this. And it's that double check of verification of, yes, we did turn this on, right? And you kind of just go through those. And we do break it into a maturity level of 1, 2, and 3 with the general assumption, definitely when we're picking one that like, hey, is this control often in most CI/CD pipelines just a flip of a switch? Or does it take more? And then we also think of the broad work, the effectiveness of it, and the long-term effects as we're kind of applying those.
And Mike, the other thing you were saying, hey, 132 is a lot. Maybe it should be, I don't know, 10 or something like that. As Cameron was saying, we have the levels in ASVS. So level 1 would automatically reduce that 132 to a smaller subset. But also keeping in mind, like my criticism of a top 10 list is that it's not granular enough. Like when you look at an OWASP top 10, it's like, well, authorization is a problem. What about authorization? Is
Secure design is a problem.
A parameter passing? What part? Or authentication is the biggest problem. What, like, is it the session manager, cookies? Is it how I secure whatever? The granularity is required. As Cameron was saying, you need to go through an audit and tick things off. But then how much of those you take is where the levels come in. So we hope that can help.
So, yeah, you'll never get any arguments from me about the aspect of those top 10 lists. But on the riffing on that idea of granularity, and I think Cameron, you'd also mentioned, the two of you mentioned the scope of this. So it's secure pipeline. I think there's a missed opportunity. You could have called this the BSVS for build, C for continuous, D for developer, E for enterprise. I think we could come up by the end of the show with A through Z for this.
Yeah.
But you just stuck with SPVS, so we'll go with what you came up with. Where are the boundaries? Does it include like my developer laptop if I'm writing code as well?
I think you're perfectly leading it, and I think that's by design. I had some strong feelings when I was talking to Farshad. When we came with this inception of this project, I was finding lots of frameworks and pseudo small frameworks. OS top 10 or the CI/CD top 10 existed at that time, but they all were so bound by a technology and a process, and by that I mean the CI/CD. It was really just focused on the second it went into GitHub or Actions or Jenkins, like it hit that actual consuming part where it's the quote unquote pipeline, that's where those technologies were. And that kind of drove me crazy because as somebody who's, I would say, paranoid around our code, security doesn't start there. And from a shift left perspective, as a DevSecOps engineer and an AppSec engineer, that's not what we primarily focus on, right? We do secure design, like you're saying, threat modeling, developer training. We try to have pre-commit scans. We tell our developers, hey, do CLI or IDE scans before you commit your code. Scan your code for secrets, right? Like a billion different things. That's the pipeline. The pipeline is from when code inception. And by inception, for me, that is when, before I even start typing, what am I thinking about? And that's why policy is in our doc in SPVS. In the plan stage, we talk a lot about policy. And I've gotten a lot of questions. Why do you have policy there? And I'm like, because it's important. You should map things and have general buy-in from a top level down that enforce the controls, and that helps you meet compliance. It's just a common standard pattern that drives clarity. And so then from there, pipeline doesn't end the second you ship your code. It's like one of my favorite questions when I'm asking somebody at interview. I'm like, when does AppSec stop? And a lot of engineers will be like, when the code shipped. And I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
Good follow-up question.
But on the counter side of that, then you're sort of doing a pretty large land grab, right? So does that become something which is overwhelming for the people who are trying to use this? In other words, like, it's one of the nice things about having a sort of very finite, this is for, the first stage of CI build is like people know, oh, this is where I apply this. When you go wide like this, does that cause confusion, or how do people consume it?
Actually, so John, that's a really good question. So what we have done is we've grouped the controls and aligned them based on the stages of a typical DevOps SDLC process, or maybe any SDLC process, because whether you're doing DevOps or maybe even waterfall, you're always going to have a planning release, a development release, integration release, and then you release it and you operate it, right? So those stages, planning, developing, integrating, releasing, and operating, they're going to always be there. The controls are grouped there. So you're like, hey, right now, maybe this part of it, I'm going to focus on my release controls, and I'm going to focus on level 1. That really reduces the subset and what you actually need to focus on.
And I would also say that anytime you're applying something like this, right, you're going to approach it from a maturity level. You're probably going to do your first assessment and be like, hey, okay, this is the controls we adhere to in level 1. And then from there, all right, where would we want to put our effort that finds the most effectiveness, to reduce the risk that we are concerned about. Maybe our pipeline is all on-prem and behind multiple firewalls, or behind multiple layers. So our level of risk is a lot lower, and so we care about maybe these parts of the SPVS rather than the holistic process. Or maybe, hey, we're on public GitHub and we commit and people can see our CD and view all that. We should be a little more concerned, so we're going to pick a lot more. So, I definitely think there is definitely a broadness to it, but we also know when our limitations are. And that's one thing around like ASVS. We make sure that we don't bump into their domain, because that's where, the application starts. We're really just trying to focus on code delivery from inception to delivery with some slight, hey, these are some basic controls you should have there at the end, at the operate stage or monitor.
Cool. Yeah, and Real quick, just comment on that. I love seeing standards like this that have that maturity aspect in there. Because how the new guy approaches something, or gal or whoever approaches something versus how someone like us who've been doing this for way too long. So I love seeing that in these type of specs.
Go ahead, Farshad.
I want to say that there are other standards that focus on specific parts of that, like SLSA, SLSA. Okay. It focuses on build provenance and integrity. You've got your S2, S2 C2F, that's for open source dependency management. And then, Cameron, there was SCVS, that's component and SBOM verification, I think they focus on. And then we found out there was SCITT, I think they deal with transparency and audit record. And then there was the CSCRM, which is Enterprise Risk Governance. So each of those kind of cover bits and pieces of SPVS. By the way, we kept getting asked these questions online, like, hey, there's SLSA, there's SCDF, there's this other one. What's the difference, right? We're like, well, we dabble into these parts, but we're not fully focusing on them. We're covering more broad across the entire pipeline, essentially.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to bring in the salsa and other four-letter words that, speaking of SPVS, that AppSec loves to cover. Let me take this now from a practical perspective. Just last week, we had the Axios NPM, and my LinkedIn blew up because everybody wanted to talk about that and other things. But supply chain hasn't gone away. We had exeutils the year before. We'll have another one in 2027. If we, not to play the I told you so game, I'm trying to avoid that type of AppSec mentality, but if we look externally from what we understand of Axios and NPM, that compromise, could the SPVS have helped us? What are there gaps? What are the things to do to help us from the quote unquote real world threats and successful attacks that we see these days?
Definitely. I think there are gaps, 100%. That was one of my favorite things when this came out, when Team PCP was, wrecking from Trivy to all the different ones coming out, and they kept compromising. I did map Axios and Team PCP against our framework, and there were a lot of the initial footholds. We did have controls that would have prevented the initial footholds. There are chaining attacks that I was like, okay, we have some gaps here. And then one of the big gaps that we just didn't have in there, which I think indirectly you might have in there because we require in the plan stage an OSS policy, some kind of policy stating how your company should maintain and handle open source, which I think is hugely important. A lot of organizations I've joined to don't even have that. And I'm like, it's so broad. Like, do you review your policy or your dependencies for one or two maintainers? Do you require security commits? How often do they do releases? Those are basic things that we have to obviously now be very concerned about. But with this, there was no cooldown period. Is one of our listed of our controls. We didn't have a dependency cooldown period that was kind of built into modern package managers and things like that. I was like, all right, that's a good gap. And so I found a couple different gaps. So do expect that there'll be a quick follow-up. That's what I'm actively working on right now, trying to figure out what controls I want to add to cover those spaces and get those out in a 1.6 release so that we can fill those little gaps. But I think that's the nature of these projects and the nature of the attacks. The reason me and Farshad, and the reason I'm such a big advocate for this, is I've been saying for years and years and years, pipelines and dependencies have been a prime attack vector. It's the watering hole, the form attack of the 90s, right? Or the early 2000s. You go on a forum and somebody drops a link in there and says, go here, and boom, now you get popped, right? It's the same kind of thing. You compromise one package and you compromise so many different companies. Why don't we have more controls? Why don't we have more stringent things around it? Why aren't we more conscious about it? And I know it's a speed versus delivery and all kinds of different conversations we could dive into, but that's my primary driver, is I want to build around this. It's the security of that. And as everything comes out, we're going to have to quickly, I know me and Farshad will have little war room chats or something, or I'll send him 100 controls and be like, here's 100 controls based off what just happened this week. And then he'll be like, Cameron, you need to calm down. We got to get this down to 5.
Just 75. But no, I appreciate that. I think that echoes obviously what Farshad was saying right at the top of this 1.5 release is very much community feedback. You want to hear where did you miss, or what's most helpful, what's less helpful. That sounds great. I want to amplify that. I'm going to play a tactical question at the moment, because you mentioned about that. I forget already how you phrased it, but basically a delay, wait before downloading a package because the package might have been compromised. That rubs me the wrong way in the sense of from an AppSec perspective, because it feels like, well, I'm just going to wait for somebody else to get popped, and for the someone who's at level 0 on their SPVS maturity to get hit with the malware. That way, then the platform then can go fix it, and then I'll download the clean version. That feels like, why not? And I'm not picking on you for this attitude. It's not uncommon. Yes, it's an industry move. But that feels like we've given up on security and we're just bandaging a symptom rather than a root cause. So, does that make sense? Does SPVS fit into something like this?
100%, it makes sense. And the reason I think is, I feel the same way. For a long time, what have we been saying for the last 20 years? Update your packages, get on the latest version, update your package. The second it comes out, update, update, right? Like just blindly update, no matter what. I don't care what you're doing, update your packages. If you're sleeping, you're not updating your packages. The different thought process today is that we now have a lot of companies that are scanning really common packages as they get uploaded for malicious attack vectors, for malware. So yes, there is the indirect assumption that maybe somebody will get popped, but now we have a lot of companies that are starting to scan these things up ahead to alert people and let them know, hey, this package is full of malware. So yes, it's kind of goes contrary to our nature. And I think the messaging that we should be saying is don't just do a 3-day cooldown period, upgrade with an intent. And the intent should be, do I have criticals that are make me more or higher risk that I need to upgrade? So I'm not going to use the cooldown period. We're going to push an update right away the second that comes out because it patches a critical level vulnerability. So I always say upgrade with intent, and waiting 3 days often. That's a common. That's probably for a lot of us. Just getting a package updated within 3 days is hard. So we kind of already have indirect package cooldown for a lot of companies.
Yeah, no, I upgrade with intent. That's a wonderful phrase. I'm definitely going to steal that. And we just passed Easter, so yeah, waiting 3 days, maybe the package will arise and be safe. Who knows? I can't. But I did promise to come back to the AI aspect. You had this whole half-point release. You included AI. We've got non-human identities. You talked a little bit about the AI, the scope of them, if you will. I'm slightly paraphrasing, that they can take a lot of perhaps undeterministic actions or actions that go beyond a very specific shell script or cron job that I was describing. Are there still, where are the gaps? What are the things that made you sit back and think, oh, this is an AI LLM aspect that actually does need a new control versus this is just a coat of paint over what we used to call shell scripts?
Farshad, you want to take that one?
I guess, because when we thought about the differences, we thought that AI, the differences are significant enough for the, like in terms of being. Let's talk about the NHI identity side of things,
Sure.
right? Because previously you had humans that were interacting with systems, and we had user identities, and then we had services, or headless services, and we had service identities. But for the most part, the services were more or less predictable. It was either a batch job in a script or some code that, runs through a bunch of, predictable algorithms, and it produces results that you can predict. Whereas with AI, it's neither a service nor a human. It can do unpredictable things, kind of like a human, but it is not a human. So it warrants its own type of identity and its own type of security controls. Now, Cameron and I had an in-depth discussion. I was also on the camp of, I think you, Mike, like, what is the difference, right? Like, why are we treating these AI services differently with their own identities and all this other stuff? But then I was convinced that, yeah, there are enough of a differences that it warrants that separation. So focus was on, those types of controls coming from that perspective. But yeah, maybe Cameron, you can elaborate a bit more.
Yeah, I could definitely. So what drove I don't know, Farshad, how you feel, but I was definitely like, hey, we need an AI thing. I was like yelling and screaming to Farshad that we need it. And because in my brain, I read this, a couple different papers around agentic software delivery life cycles, right? Or like some people call it agentic development life cycle, right? We're starting to get rid of the software part of it. And I was like, what does that mean? And I'm trying to visualize like where we're headed as an industry. Because the assumption that code is 100% written by humans is gone, right? Everybody's, there's like, this is what control we had. I had a control in there, and me and Farshad debated this for a while, and Farshad like destroyed my brain for a week after he called me out on this. But like, we had a control that was, you have to have credentials that differentiate, or commits that differentiate between human and AI generated code. And he was like, why would you have that? Everybody's coding like with AI. So like, that just seems like needless work. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, yes, that makes so much sense, right? And it destroyed my brain. But we have all these like new ways that we're developing software. We are, there's a lot of companies, and again, I was at a dinner, and there's this CISO with a bunch of CISOs, and one CISO that said this term at the dinner table that just destroyed my brain too. He said, my dev team is no longer committing code based off features. They're committing code off time. Because they have so many agents and they're delivering so much that it no longer makes sense to deliver features, but like every 15 minutes, just put a commit in and then that's how it is. And so they were committing every 15 minutes. And it was like, how do I secure that? Because all modern tooling falls over in that kind of methodology and thought process. And I was like, oh man, and so I was like, all right, so maybe that's the extreme, right? Like that's the super extreme. Let's rein that in and let's think about from the SPVS side, how would we develop controls that make sense, that bound this speed of delivery and makes sense? And that's the big thing, is like it's got to make sense. It's got to be bound in practicality and usefulness around the controls. And so with AI, we've got a lot of concerns. There's a lot of different things happening. We got MCP servers. Everyone was talking about that, 9 months ago? Now nobody talks about it. And that's either because we've forgotten them or we're no longer use them. There's a big debate on that one.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and why would you use an MPC server when you can just put it in an instruction or in a file with all the API calls and boom, now you don't need an MCP server. So there's just a whole bunch of different concerns that come with AI software delivery, and add that as a mechanism where developers are no longer writing code, but they are human PR checkers.
Yes.
So you got one phrase here in the AI section that really caught my eye that I haven't seen before. We're familiar with SBOM, software bill of materials. What's an AI bomb?
Oh gosh, AI bombs. They're actually, I think, useful. I have strong feelings around SBOM. I feel like SBOMs are not useful.
Preach.
They're more noise. They're useful in a way of auditing, but I'm like, we already kind of do that with SEA tools. We already get our list. SBOM just puts it in a format that we can toss to auditors. And I'm like, all right, now I have a billion questions for my auditor because they're going to ask me why I have so many vulnerabilities. And I'm like, hey, well, we actually don't use 99, all those vulns, and we already triage them. OpenVex, I love OpenVex. I wish they just combined and had one giant standard that was SBOM, which is merged into those. But AI bombs are a list of predefined models, data, essentially all the AI components that came together in your product. And I think that's useful because you can start to glean, are they embedding a really ancient model that is known to have security concerns or, not as verbose in what you need. But from the standard, I have it written here. It defines models, data sets, prompts, agent frameworks, SDKs, tool servers, retrieval sources. I think they even have data sets. Yeah, data sets in some of them, which all are very interesting because from a security side, we would be concerned about what data sets, what data pools are they pulling in? Is that now one? If you look at the OS top 10s, all 6 of them, there's data poisoning in pretty much every one of them. That's a huge concern. So an AI bomb would present that information to you. And that's why I say I think AI bombs are actually pretty useful.
Yeah, and it feels like it fits into that just observability. What do I have? And then the follow-up, as you mentioned, with SBOMs, which I think are still helpful. But as you pointed out, everybody just also has the SCA tools just to confirm. So what do I have? What am I using? Is an important question. Now I'm going to have to start to wrap us up here. Your CISO that was talking about features versus time. As an end user, I always appreciate a team that's not focused on giving me features, but just giving me lots of commits. I hope they're being measured on lines of code, just like other sarcastic comments I could go with. But the two of you are not being measured on lines of code or commits or time, but you are constrained by time. And at the end of every single episode, we like to ask our guests to describe AppSec in 3 words. Now, I'm going to steal upgrade with intent because right there, I love those 3 words related to SPVS. That's how I'm going to summarize this wonderful project. But the two of you have to have some ideas of your own. I see you smiling, Cameron. So let's start with you. How would you describe this?
I love this interview question, and I always give it to everybody I interview. Just expect it if you're interviewing for me. My answer is always security of code. And the reason I say security of code, because code is everything, right? It's from inception. We teach developers how to code. And then when it's finally delivered, it's code that is running. So security of code in all aspects. And that's kind of why I view the SPVS in the way it is. It's the whole process.
What does the code produce and who produces it, human or otherwise? Good call. Yep. Farshad, 3 words from you, please.
I'm just going to take what Cameron said and turn it into 3 words: making code secure.
You two definitely have been collaborating for quite a while, I can tell. And with that collaboration, hopefully we will include the link to the OWASP SPVS site, the 1.5 release. Listeners, please do provide feedback. And I guess what's a good way for people to contribute? Let's sneak in one last question.
Farshad,
How
you
should
want
they
to take that?
collaborate?
We have a GitHub repo. So if they look up SPVS GitHub, it'll come. And then there's a markdown file we've got for, I think, what is it called, Cameron? Joining the project.
We
I
have
can't remember
a
the name of the specific file.
contributor markdown file, and then we have joining the SPVS, because I keep getting asked, can I join the SPVS? And I'm like, well, you got to participate before you join.
Yeah.
So, and we do have a Slack channel too in the OWASP Slack.
Very fun. Awesome. So yes, listeners, go hang out with Farshad and Cameron. They're obviously some fun folks to talk about supply chain, AI, and many other things. So thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
you.
Also, of course, want to thank John for joining me as well. And of course, thank you, everyone. Please do stick around for 2 recorded interviews from this year's RSAC coming up next. One's about zero trust, and the other one is about LLM-driven pen testing. A little bit topical, who knows? Thanks again for joining us. Please remember to subscribe, check out the show notes, share us on the socials. And speaking of good things to listen to, check out Behemoth by Ghost. R.I.P. James. We'll see you next time on Application Security Weekly. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter. METER.
Welcome to RSAC 2026. I'm Doug White, and joining me today is Rohan Ravindranath. I got it, I think. The founder, a founder even, and CEO at AppSec. And you wanted to talk about a blurb, a title called Zero Trust That Actually Ships, Moving from Strategy Decks to Real Security. Now, this immediately got my attention because I'm notorious for telling people to do things. And it's very easy to tell people to do things. So I can put up a slide that says, do this, and moving from that, so this is almost the title of this, moving from that slide that says you should do this to actually implementing something, that's a lot harder, regardless of what it is. But one of the things that you wanted to talk about was just that step, really, right? That everybody's got a slide. How do you actually do it? If you got the strategy, how do we do it with zero trust?
Right. And you know what, Doug, in most cases, right, it isn't actually a strategy problem. It ends up becoming a shipping problem. I've never really walked into an enterprise that doesn't have a zero trust deck. They typically align to NIST, they're aligned to DoD, they have all of the bells and whistles and the sign-offs, but that's not really the problem. The problem is that in most cases, that strategy document is a theoretical document, and it isn't really translated into what you would see on the field. Because you have network teams or cloud teams that are knee-deep in basically doing, let's say, modernization activities, network refreshes, cloud migrations, etc. And these strategies are things that essentially would sit in PowerPoint somewhere in a SharePoint deck, right, without really moving into anything in the real world. And I think what it boils down to is the approach that many enterprises take, right? Which is security is still treated as something that comes in as a gate at the end. And what happens when you actually have security come in as a gate at the end is that the infrastructure has already been deployed without any of the foundational guardrails. And now layering on or bolting on security at the end becomes very difficult. So that's where, there's a disconnect between what happens in strategy and what happens in the on-ground reality. And the data kind of backs it up as well. When you look at attacks today, compromise times are typically under 60 seconds. And the attacks today are not because of breaking through firewalls. The attacks today are because of using stolen credentials, going ahead and elevating privilege, and then laterally moving across the entire network. So that is not always a technology gap. That shows that there's a gap in the operating model, what's needed for design, architecture, and governance, and really tying that together with the required people, process, and technology to make that work. So that's where things typically fall apart, which is you have a strategy which is good, which is great on PowerPoint, but there's a disconnect in terms of the operating model that has to come in to translate that into the on-ground reality.
So I completely agree with you. So we've seen this all the way down through history, from somebody coming in and saying, I need a piece of code written. I wrote it. We put it in place. Nobody thought about security. That was later. We'll test it when it's in production,
Right.
whatever. And modern is much worse than that, right? Because companies now beta test on the consumer. When you're moving, though, is this what you're saying here? Is that when you're moving from the old world to the new world? So I'm going from a network on-prem, servers on-prem, files on-prem,
Right.
to this cloud, which was sort of a partial step, and then now into this hybrid, this prem, that prem, and these prems over here, and they're all connected through a virtual switch and a virtual routing system somewhere. Is that where you're saying, because we're in such a rush to get there, because we were,
Right.
that we just, again, did the same thing all over? We let this piece drop out of it. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair, right? And if you think about it, it's mainly based on how different teams are measured. Mm-hmm. If you look at cloud teams, they're not measured in terms of how well they write security policies. They're measured in how quickly you can move applications into the cloud. If you look at networking teams, they're measured in how quickly you can have branches come alive, right? Not really looking at what would be the required security posture needed to keep that branch secure. Mm-hmm. So that's where you start seeing that disconnect, that every team basically goes ahead and check boxes, different things saying that they've met their KPIs, but the overall security posture is actually much worse than what you started off, right? And that needs a paradigm shift in the way that you would think about embedding security. You don't have to have it bolted on or a gate at the end. You got to embed security in everything that you do from the ground up.
So one of the ideas that you brought up was this idea of zero trust as code. So are you, I mean, and I've seen it's difficult to create this paradigm shift.
Right.
I mean, as a security person who moved out of that dev realm and that ops realm, telling people to do this is one thing. And it goes back to your first slide.
Right.
Do it.
Right.
But don't do it.
Right.
Is this zero trust as code a way to inject this almost by force?
Well, let me qualify it in this way, right?
Okay.
The foundational idea of zero trust as code is really simple, which is that your security policies shouldn't be treated any differently than your infrastructure code. That means that the security policies have to be version controlled, they have to be peer reviewed, they have to be deployed via a pipeline, and they have to be completely auditable. Now, it shouldn't really be the traditional style of security policies living in a Confluence page or security policies living in a firewall communication matrix. That's typically what we see, right? And let me take a real example. So today, when we develop, let's say, a landing zone for any of our clients, we don't focus on just the VPCs, the networking infrastructure, or just looking at what identity integrations would need to happen, right? So when we do that, we actually build out an entire connected set of repositories that also embed all of the security baselines that would be needed in the first place. Things like security groups, network access controls, the security tooling, the SIM tooling that would be needed. And all of it is basically pulled in through one cohesive pipeline. So what that means is that when the workload team goes and asks for a new account, they don't just get a blank VPC with a wish list of all the security controls that they should have put in. What they get is a VPC and an account structure with all of the security controls embedded inside. So that means that you have segmentation from an east-west perspective already embedded inside. You have the security tooling that would be needed for that particular cloud construct already embedded inside. And that makes a big difference, right? It's a force multiplier in terms of what you would actually be able to do from a secure landing zone perspective in place. And the thing is, the workload teams can't remove it because all of these are instantiated by the zero trust as code pipeline. Where you defined your intent, and that intent is at the organizational level. So it can't be manually overridden by any one particular person at their account level, etc. And the exact same logic if somebody's doing something on the networking side. So what we do is that we embed the zero trust network access policies within the SD-WAN templates if it's like a branch migration.
Okay.
So what happens is when the branch comes live, the security policies get inherited. You don't have somebody manually configuring the policies later or really thinking about or guessing, right? What should be the right security policies that need to come inside for this particular branch. Now, the thing that really makes a big difference in any zero trust as code pipeline is the ability to basically do this across multiple vendors, because no environment truly has a single vendor or a single technology. Right. You have multiple different vendors. So that's where the zero trust as code pipeline abstracts all of the different languages that would be needed for each of these individual vendors and creates basically what you would want as an intent and then configures it in the individual language of each vendor. And a really powerful thing to this is basically something called drift detection. So what that means is that even if somebody went ahead and manually widened up a security policy or a security group, right, the drift engine would detect that in a matter of a few seconds, and then it would auto-remediate it back to the baseline. So now you have something which is working from the top down across different products, across different stacks, and really creating the intent that you want. So that's really where zero trust as code comes in, and it's completely auditable, version controlled. So you can go back or revert back to any state that you want to do in the past as well.
How does that spread? Now, it's very intriguing. How does that spread upstream, downstream? So now, as we see this migration into this much bigger space, how does that sort of drift or whatever apply as I start pulling in APIs and other components and agentic AI and all these kind of things? How does that sort of now permeate that entire fabric?
You're right. And maybe in order to qualify that question, right, I'll actually address it in two segments.
Okay.
So one is that drift detection is agnostic of whether we're using APIs or whether we're using any other technology stack or third-party vendor. It doesn't make a difference, right? Because the drift engine can detect drifts with any individual construct.
Okay.
Now, you brought up a really interesting thing, which is, how do you embed agentic AI workflows in the context of security, right? And maybe to qualify this, I'll actually talk about the value of where agentic AI can play a role and where agentic AI perhaps can't play a role.
Okay.
Right? So if I have to break it down into two segments, if you think about, can we enforce segmentation policies faster? Can we go ahead and detect drift and remediate things faster? Can AI play a role in that? 100%, right? In fact, for many of our enterprise clients today, we are embedding that as part of our normal operating cadence when it comes to having AI security workflows. But on the other hand, if you think about, can the AI make a decision into how much risk your organization should be willing to take? Can it be a decision maker in that? Can it basically take a look at your enterprise and tell you that these are your crown jewels that you should basically take a look at? Well, it can't. The reason is that, AI is not part of those conversations because those conversations need deep business context. That business context happens in a room with the stakeholders, the business owners, the application owners, etc., right? And AI is not part of that conversation. So there's two things that we have to look at from an AI accelerant perspective, right? Where can AI accelerate things, which is in terms of, faster segmentation policies, detecting drift, auto remediation, 100%, right? But where can't it do it? In all the other areas where it requires individual deep decision business context to make a difference. Because, if you even think probably a step further, right? Even before you start bringing inside agentic AI workflows and security, what do you really need? You need your enterprise infrastructure to first be AI ready, right? If your enterprise infrastructure isn't AI ready, then there's no point of basically putting in all of these AI security controls. Because what the AI is going to do in that point is that it's going to create policies and remediate policies, but no one's actually validating if that's even tied to the business context in the first place, right? So the first step is to go ahead and have your AI infrastructure ready. And then as part of that, embed all of these AI agentic workflows as part of it. Otherwise, it's like pretty much like putting cruise control on a car, but you're pointing it at a wall. So you're not going to get very far in that particular case, right?
I mean, that's a very good analogy for AI in general, right? Is that it is like putting cruise control in the car and pointing it at a wall. I mean, it's going to do what it knows how to do, which doesn't necessarily include avoiding a wall. I think the last part of this is really, you and I had talked earlier about sort of these three phases, and one of the things you were talking about was this 90-day shipping cadence to move from where you are to this other place, this dreamy place that you're telling me about that I wish I was in. Could you just give us a rundown on that a little bit? Like, what is that? I mean, what is that? What does that 90-day shipping cadence look like?
Right. So, in the real world, right, you have to be really ruthless about priorities because there's so many things all the time that happen. So if I were to create a 30, 60, 90-day cadence, here's what I would do, right? In phase 1, which is 0 to 30, the most important thing is to prove that the mechanism works. And what that means is that, we have to start incorporating and protecting the crown jewels. And now, in any enterprise, right, depending on the size of the enterprise, you could have 100 applications, you could have 500 applications, you could have more. You don't want to cast the net across all of them because that is a trap, right? You want to focus on only your crown jewels. How do you determine what a crown jewel is, right? Is a compromise of that application going to create an existential crisis for your enterprise? If the answer is yes, it's a crown jewel, right? And you got to put it inside that bucket. You want to end up with 10, maybe 20 at most, right? And these are things like Active Directory, payment systems, any kind of mission critical databases, right? And those essentially fall into the bucket of your crown jewels. For these, incorporate micro-segmentation. What does that really mean, right? You got to go ahead and take off these wide open allow all rules and go ahead and configure application-specific explicit allow rules. At the very bottom, go ahead and put a default deny, but right above that default deny, go ahead and put a learning rule. What the learning rule does is that any of the explicit allows that you didn't really catch in the first go, it learns it, it logs it, and you have a huge list of now rules that you could now make very specific. Typically, this is the tricky part because this is where things can go out of hand. What we do with most of our clients is that we incorporate automation in order to then translate those learning rules into real-world app flows, and then that's what you would do in day 30. So day 30, you have predictable zero-trust constructs. Day 60, which is day 30 to 60, you want to go ahead and kill the VPN. So here's the thing, right? The problem with VPNs is that they allow you to have flat network access. Once a user is in the network using a VPN, he can hop on to any segment that he has a part of, pretty much like an all-access pass, right? And that is the basis of many of the attacks that we see here today. So what we have to really focus on is eliminate the VPN and move to ZTNA. Now the question is, okay, where do I start, right? Take your noisiest VPN that you have. You have 20 VPN gateways, pick the noisiest VPN gateway, start there, right? The learnings from there, you can always translate into every other VPN gateway that you have. Take a look at maybe a service account which has the longest lived credentials. Somebody from 2017 who had admin credentials enabled on the service account, that's the guy who you have to hit and make sure that that goes off the network, and you move to ZTNA. When you move to ZTNA, what you're essentially getting is identity-centric controls. But really what you're getting is that continuous security validation that isn't really available in a VPN. That's what you should focus on from day 30 to 60. And from day 60 to 90, you got to now move into the automation cadence, which is automate and operate. We spoke about the zero trust as code pipelines, right? Now, how do you really implement that in the real world? You take the wins that you had from milestone 1, take that segmentation template, make it self-service. Put it in we go ahead and we'll host it in maybe a Terraform repository. So whenever anybody else from now on has to go ahead and request for a new account, a new workload, spin up a new branch, any of those combinations, right? They now have to use the exact same template that you had put inside there, and it becomes self-serving in a way, right, for everything that goes on from there. So that's what day 60 to 90 should look like.
Okay.
And then you got to start small, and then you move across from crown jewels to all the other applications that you have.
And don't get caught up in the everything is equally important.
Absolutely
that's very common.
That's a very, very common trap, right?
Oh, it is. We've all been there, and we all do that, right? Well, Rohan, thank you for joining us today. If you want to learn more about ZapSec, please visit securityweekly.com/ZapSec RSAC. And for all of our RSAC 2026 coverage from Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. Stick around, and we'll be back after this break with more content.
Welcome to RSAC 2026. I'm Joshua Marpet. Joining me today is Ido Geffen, CEO and co-founder at Novee Security. Ido, thanks for being here. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for getting me in.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all.
Pretty excited.
So, Ido, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
You're Novee Security, and by the way, I'm sorry, you just told me like 3 seconds ago. What does Novee stand for? It's an abbreviation.
Yeah, it's an acronym of No Vulnerabilities Exploitation Ever. So this is basically
Okay, that's a bold claim, my friend.
we have a big vision. Yeah,
That's a huge, like that's basically going, oh yeah, come at me.
exactly.
That's seriously a provocation. You know that, right?
Yeah. We are going to be the golden standard when it comes to finding vulnerabilities and fixing them before the bad guys can act. So
I have incredible respect, and I at this point, it's like I want to grab a bucket of popcorn and wait because that's going to be interesting. But okay,
Yeah.
So you mentioned that Novee Security is AI pen testing, or as I like to call it, and I said I was going to do this to you,
Yeah.
AI exploitability scanning, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the things I asked you already was, why are you different? And you said, hey, all these founders have nation-state level offensive security expertise.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that? Who's your team? Like, talk to me.
yeah, sure. So we have a really unique team when it comes to cyber and AI. All of the people in our team that are writing the prompts for the agents, for people that have real experience from nation-state level when it comes to finding zero-day vulnerabilities.
Okay.
So these are the guys that are really articulating their knowledge, their expertise into the hive mind of AI agents that we are developing.
You're developing. So
Yeah.
you're using your own agent. You're not just a wrapper around anybody else's.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So part of what we are doing is we have few PhDs in our team that are specialized in AI. And we are training on our own AI model that being trained on tens of thousands of different applications and really fine-tuned to be the best in the world when it comes to finding vulnerabilities, and not just the surface level, but also business logic vulnerability.
Oh, I want to hit that in a second, but I want to ask you a question. So you wrote your own LLM.
So we are taking an open source LLM
Uh-huh.
and fine-tuning it based the training that we have
Over and over and over and over
Yeah.
and over again. Okay.
Exactly.
How much,
Reinforcement learning, yeah.
how much time have you put into training this? Like, I'm honestly curious. I really am.
Yeah.
Like, how much time and effort have you put into training your LLM now? What do you think?
So it takes a few months in order to get into good results.
Okay.
And, if you're looking even deeper, like there is a lot of different types of categories of different vulnerabilities. So each time we are training on a specific type of vulnerabilities because the methodology, the way that you need to calculate those type of vulnerabilities is different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah. Every vulnerability category is a fully different type. How you find it, how you discuss
Validate it.
Yeah, not inventory, but discovery of it,
Exactly.
attacking it, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you're spending the training time on training this LLM on every single different category of vulnerability.
Yeah. And to be honest, the hardest part is not the training itself, is setting the infrastructure for being able to do so. So what we did, we took thousands of different applications that you have over the internet,
Right.
and now making them run in a live way. And then you have like a real environment that you can train your models to run upon.
Oh, so you built a cyber range sort of
Exactly.
for your model to work
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And so you built all these applications to live in that cyber range actually working.
Yeah. We're calling it the Novee Gym. So we have
Nova
a gym.
Gym. I love it. I love it. I love it. They're training.
They're training. They're being improved all the time. We're benchmarking it all the time.
So your athlete AIs are training against all these.
Yeah,
applications.
exactly.
I love that, dude. That's awesome. Okay, so you mentioned business logic. I want to hit that for a second.
Yeah.
When you say a business logic vulnerability, what do you mean? Because let me explain. When I was a lot younger, I worked at a company where we did business logic work, and it was like, can you stack the coupons? Is the process working? The workflow working properly? Is that what you're talking about, or am I wrong?
So pretty much, I will give you a few real examples. So
Please.
one of our customers is a very big HR system. And they are very focused specifically on the payroll model.
Okay.
They want to make sure that employee A cannot see the salary of employee B.
Right, it's rude. Yeah, absolutely correct.
Yeah, so this is, for example, a business logic issue that employee A will see the salary of employee B, but it really depends on the role of the employee. Because if I'm the manager, for example, maybe it's okay for me to see the salary.
If they're
of my
your
employee.
direct reports, it's totally fine.
Exactly.
If they're not, it's inappropriate.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you're an HR, VP of HR, then okay, you can see the salary maybe of everyone.
Right.
So this is exactly when it comes this fine tuning of the business logic of the specific application and the specific role that you're testing.
Does that change company by company, or is that just
Yeah.
the application by application?
So it's changed company by company. Yeah.
Okay, so you have to train not just the application, but that application of potentially 1,000 different companies.
Yeah. So what we are training is in advance the model to be very, very good in finding vulnerabilities.
Okay.
What we are doing when any new interaction with a customer is the ability to really understand the logic of each one of their applications. So we have a full mapper that understands the application, digests the documentation of this application, the Swagger file, and you can even just speak with that. I mean, in prompt way, this is what most important for me. This is the logic that I care about. This is what important for my business.
I like that.
So yeah, so this
That
context.
makes sense.
Sure.
That makes a lot of sense. So you customize via documentation almost, not just for each application, like you read the Swagger file for the API or whatever,
Right.
but also for this company, this is what we care about, this is what we don't care about, or care about less, whatever.
Yeah, I will give you more another example. Okay,
Please.
so one of our, like we are mapping all of the OWASP WSTG different types of vulnerability.
Right.
So one of those categories is user enumeration, like the fact that by default you don't want user A to see all of the other users that you have in your system.
Exactly the same thing we just talked about with payroll. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But you do have some applications that part of the business logic of the application, it is okay that one user will be able to see all of the other users. Let's say Facebook. That's okay.
Good point. Yeah, social media. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to see all of the other users because you want to be their friend. Like this is part of. So in this case, you want to make sure that you're not highlighting user enumeration vulnerabilities in, let's say, company like Facebook. For them, it's a false
Because
positive.
it's deliberate. They want to
Exactly.
enumerate the users.
Yeah.
Okay, valid.
This is what I mean. I mean to understand the business logic of an application. So
Oh, yeah, good point. That makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
Okay, good example. Thank you. I appreciate that.
so it comes on two folds. One is the ability to really find these type of vulnerabilities,
Right.
but on the other hand, not to spam the user or the customer or the practitioner in false positive issues that, okay, I don't care about it. This is not a problem of mine.
Because you just wasted my time now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something we said earlier, which was exploitability scanning. And this is a personal question, personal from me, I should say. I always characterize this as there's vulnerability scanners, there's pen testing, which is a manual pen test to go in and get the gold, if you will.
Yeah.
And then in between, there's an exploitability scanner, which is what most of the AI pen testing services really are.
Yeah.
Okay. And I talk about this. I'll give you my example. I'm very proud. I'm an ex-police officer. So it's a cop walking down a street, and if they shake the door and the door is open and they close the door and call it in, that's a vulnerability scanner. If they go, all right, and they open the door and they go into the office and they crack the safe and they get the gold and they walk it out, that's a pen test. Okay?
Yeah.
But somebody that opens the door, steps inside, says, oh yeah, this is not good, walks out, closes the door, and then goes and checks every other door and window is an exploitability scan. Where would you place what you do on that sort of scale?
Yeah, so pretty much all of the above.
Really?
I mean the exploitability aspect is really, really important.
I agree.
It is very important aspect of what we are doing, but we are also in the business of finding those vulnerabilities, making sure that those vulnerabilities are exploitable, but we're not stopping there right away. I mean, yeah, it is exploitable, but now what can you do with that? So
Right.
give it the right prioritization, and then what we also provide you is the steps to replicate, and even a script that you can run. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, so the developer themselves can validate this is a true positive. It's not just a false positive.
It's actually reaching the target. It's
Exactly.
Okay.
And-
And that's I think the difference, because a vulnerability scan is just like 14,000 vulnerabilities long, and you're like, oh God, I got to go through all that.
True.
But a proper exploitability scanner is the holes go all the way through the Swiss cheese. You know that analogy?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the holes go all the way through the Swiss cheese. This is a problem. I'm not going to go steal the information. That's what a pen test does.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you where the holes are. I'm going to point you to them, tell you how to get there, how to do it, how to replicate it. And then if you want to test it, that's cool.
Yeah.
But you're the human. You have to tell me, how bad is that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Are we on the same page?
Yeah, but I will add to that part of the uniqueness of what we're building is even not stopping there. So yeah, this is exploitable. You can replicate it by yourself, but then we are personalizing the defense mechanisms. So for example, if I know what your web application firewall, then I can give you a specific instructions on how to mitigate. Or if you give me an access to the code, I can give you a specific instructions on how to remediate it.
Are you going to do auto remediation as well, or no?
I guess in the future, I mean, today people still have some trust issues when it comes to full automation, when it comes to AI agents.
But that's possible.
Yeah. Technologically, it's not an issue for us.
So like, technologically, it's not hard, to be honest with you, but it's a trust issue.
Yeah, definitely.
But providing them with all the steps that they need to do it, that's fine. And then you do that now, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a problem with my web app firewall you mentioned, my WAF. There's a vulnerability in the WAF because I'm a version behind. You're going to give me all the instructions on how to update my WAF or fix the library or do whatever.
Yeah.
Because you've discovered not only that it is vulnerable, but that vulnerability is exploitable and that it is actually exploitable to reach something that I value.
Yeah, and more than that, we will help you. Let's say that you have a specific version of web application firewall. So we can tell you in this specific version, this is how you can mitigate it. If you can upgrade it, you have a better option. And then part of the retesting, the reassessment option is once you're doing it, you can reassess it and check if you really mitigated the issue.
Okay, so that actually, one of the questions that I got, I think is also related to that.
Yeah.
Is that why it's different? What you do is different. A real, actual AI exploitability and pen test scan, better than just something with the logo scrubbed off and here's your vulnerability scan as a pen test.
Yeah.
Is that how do you tell?
So what do you mean? How do you tell?
There's so many pen test, the term for them is pen test puppy mills.
Okay.
Where they just basically do a vuln scan, they scrub the logo off the front page, like here's your pen test.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, it's so annoying because it's not real.
Yeah.
How do I tell what you do from what they do?
Okay, great question. So first of all is, in the end, you're seeing the issue that we are able to populate in the system and show you. But more than that, you have full transparency when it comes to what exactly we are doing and why. So after we are mapping the application and analyzing the full application, building a graph of how the application works, we are building something that's called an application knowledge base and test cases. So basically you can see exactly what are all of the test cases that we are doing.
Okay.
What was the objective that the agent put to itself? Why testing this type of authentication, authorization, input validation, etc. And what exactly was full trace about what we tested, what was the response from the server. And if you're okay, and most of the time you are okay on most fronts, you can see exactly what we tried, why we tried, and when we stopped. So we have this full transparency about this is what we did, this is what we didn't find, this is what we did find.
That's pretty good. The full transparency and you have every step laid out. You have all the mitigation and remediation steps laid out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's much better than a basic scan, man.
It is. It's really different.
Okay, and so let's say I hire your company.
Yeah.
Novee, I love your stuff. I want you to come in and just run a scan. Do you run these scans continuously? What's your recommendation, honestly?
Yeah, so we can run continuously, or you can decide what is the frequency that is relevant for you.
What do most of your customers do?
So for the core applications, our best practice is let's do it continuously.
Okay.
Because you're all the time developing those applications.
Yes.
You have new features, you have new capabilities. So
Wait. Can you do this on custom apps?
yeah, of course.
No, not of course. Most of the AI pen testers that are out there don't do it on custom apps. They do it on common apps, Office and Salesforce, and not Salesforce, but whatever common apps are out there, they'll work on. Custom apps, a lot of them won't work on. You're telling me you'll do it on custom apps?
Yeah, this is our bread and butter. Yeah, I mean.
That's a big difference, man. You should talk about that more, seriously.
Okay. I'm learning here.
Okay, seriously, it's a big difference. What are the limits? What are things that you don't work on?
In what sense?
Do you do OT?
Oh, okay, in that sense. So currently we are very focused on everything related to mapping all of the external exposure, commonly totally black box like real hackers are doing, and then mapping all of your applications, and then getting inside those applications.
Makes sense.
Including if you have chatbot or any AI capabilities inside of those applications.
Oh, you'll do those too?
Yeah, prompt
Lovely.
injection, jailbreaking, yeah.
That's awesome. Honestly, that's one of the biggest things, because as much as everybody's going agentic AI security, having something that is very common sense, and I don't mean any offense, but what you're doing is, it just makes sense.
Agreed.
To do that for these AI applications is, everybody talks about it, not many actually do it.
Yeah, this is the big announcement that we have here in our SRSA, that we've added the AI penetration testing aspect into the product. So yeah.
Oh,
it is a big.
I didn't even know you had an announcement.
Yeah.
Okay, so that you're announcing it now today.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic! Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh well, Ido, thanks for joining us today. Yep. To learn more about Novee Security, including their new announcement, please visit securityweekly.com/Novee RSAC. That's NOVEE RSAC. For full RSAC 2026 coverage from Cyber Risk Alliance, visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. Stick around, we'll be back after the break.